Nathan, who are we talking about today?
The one, the only, the incomparable Elizabeth Taylor, only the
Yes.
most iconic actress of the 20th century. I mean, Katie, what do you know her for?
Her violet eyes, her
Oh,
just stunning beauty, her exceptional talent, the seven husbands, eight marriages thing. Nathan, why don't you bring Elizabeth Taylor into the world?
all right. So Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor was born on February 27th of 1932 in London, which
Mhm.
makes her the first maybe Pisces that we've covered besides Katie. I mean, we
Well,
haven't covered Katie yet,
well,
uh,
because no,
because
yeah,
Katie's not dead.
since we only cover people that are dead, let's hope you're not covering me with a Ouija board sometime soon. But no, because we cover a lot of women on this show that we don't know their birthdays.
Touche.
And so she is the first person that we're covering that we definitely know is a Pisces. So her mother, Sarah, had tried to be an actress before getting married, but she didn't get very far in her career. And then Elizabeth's dad, Francis Taylor, was an art dealer. And so they were actually both American, but dad's job moved him to London. And there in London, they lived a very comfortable life.
And her dad was best friends with this guy named Victor Cazalet. And Cazalet was so well connected that his godmother was Queen Victoria. So
Yeah.
he's not exactly slumming it.
We don't have time to go into a lot about Victor Cazalet's life, but he was a gay man and he was a member of parliament. And him and some other gay members of parliament, I'm sure they were on the DL because it was the 30s or whatever, but still, they would later get the nickname the Glamour Boys.
Okay, wait. Where is this society and where can I sign up?
And the Glamour Boys.
That is just so happens to be my middle name.
Victor and Elizabeth's dad were close.
Mm?
Give eyes. Like really close.
Like bumping butts close?
We have no evidence.
Okay.
We have no evidence. It's just rumors that Victor and Francis were more than friends. But as the
Bumping
fam-
butts.
as the famous saying goes, where there's smoke, there's butt stuff. So did I get that right? Did I get that right?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Anyway, back to Elizabeth. It really seems like her early life was very, very happy. Pretty idyllic. She had an older brother named Howard, and both of the Taylor children were doted on, but Mama definitely had a favorite. It happened to be the outrageously beautiful daughter, Elizabeth.
Let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. She is the type of beautiful that has never gone out of style, never
Yeah.
will go out of style. She is from all angles gorgeous from the day she was born.
Yeah, like soft features, big eyes, big violet colored eyes, like just
Yes.
stunning beauty. One of the things that made her so striking, like I said, was her violet eyes. Less than 1% of the population in the world has violet eyes. She was born beautiful, is
She was
basically
what
what
we're
we're
getting
saying.
at is she was born beautiful. And no matter what she did in her life, she was always going to get a little bit of special treatment
Yeah, and
because
this is
God has
fine.
favorites.
And it's not me.
Hey, I'm pretty.
As you drink that drink like that.
And I'm sober. Jeez.
I'm not.
Oh, this is going to be fun editing. Also, to make her childhood even seem even more perfect, from a young age, she always wanted to be surrounded by animals, specifically horses and dogs.
The Taylors fit in perfectly in this world of affluent society in London. So, what happened?
World War II happened.
Oh,
Yes, as much as Mrs. and Mr. Taylor loved living in British high society, they did not love the idea of getting bombed. They moved back to the USA and they packed up and they decided to open up shop in Los Angeles.
And story goes that on the ship from London, they showed the movie The Little Princess, starring Shirley Temple. Elizabeth was mesmerized and started to ask her mother lots of questions about movies and how does this work? So her mom was like, oh, oh, you're just so happen to be interested in movies, my beautiful little 10-year-old gorgeous little child. And we just so happen to be moving to Los Angeles.
Where all the movies are made?
Ooh.
Oh, interesting. So in 1940, her dad, Francis, opens up a new gallery in Los Angeles. And his gallery quickly becomes the talk of the town. And thanks to a friend of a friend, there was this gossip columnist named Hedda Hopper.
Hedda Hopper had a really popular column, and Elizabeth's godfather, Victor McMoneybags, calls Hedda up and was like, hey, my friend Francis Taylor is, opening up this gallery here in LA. It'd be super cool if you could write something positive about it and give him good vibes. And so Hedda did. And before you know it, the upper crust of LA were flocking to his gallery, and the Taylors are now up in high society once again.
Again. Yeah, it was during this time that Sarah Taylor started asking all of her new friends, like, have y'all seen my beautiful daughter? Have y'all seen, like, how gorgeous she is? Does anybody know how I can get her an audition? And eventually, because I guess she just didn't shut up about it, somebody was like, oh my God, somebody please put Sarah in touch with some movie studios.
Like, okay, momager, we get it.
Yes.
And Elizabeth gets an audition with 2 studios, Universal and MGM. Huh, no big deal. And they also both offer her contracts. So in the end, Sarah decides to sign Elizabeth with Universal Studios, and they signed her first acting contract in 1941 when Elizabeth was 9 years old.
9 years old. Like, what? Babies don't need jobs. Before we continue, I do think it's important, just in case anybody doesn't know, like, kind of the studio machine of the quote-unquote golden era of film, like what it meant for an actor to be signed to a studio in the 1940s. Basically, you sign a contract, and in it, it's like, this contract is for this many years or this many movies, whichever comes first, kind of thing. For more established actors or for new actors, things are going to be different, obviously. And while you're in contract with that studio, they run every aspect of your life. And the bigger of a star you become, the more grasp they have on things outside of
that
movies,
still happens, like, today. Yeah, because if you think about it, whenever they're like, hey, so-and-so actor, you're about to get this Marvel Comics character, so they have to bulk up and completely work out for 6 months straight and probably do some
and
other
make sure you
things
don't have a
that
scandal
are illegal.
or...
But they get all bulked up and do these things.
You mean those abs aren't natural?
I just don't. I don't think so.
Yeah, no. So baby Elizabeth gets a 6-month contract, which is less scary.
Yes, she's not like signed into something, but she is signed in with the studio, and what that means is that 6 months, everything she does is movie. Here you go. Here's a new role. Here's a new thing. You got to memorize this. Go down here. Go do this. So in the downtime, you would still go to the lot and work. You would take like acting classes, dance classes, singing lessons, really whatever you needed to improve.
But something you need to know is that in these contracts, they don't just run your life when you're at the studio. These production studios would also dictate who you date, who you don't date, who you could be friends with, what parties you could attend, what you wore, just like going to the grocery store or something like that.
Publicity,
they controlled,
right?
Yes, because like they wanted to control the public image just as much.
And back then they churned out movies way faster than they do now. And when an actor passed out from exhaustion from working 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, it was like meh. This is fine. Here's some
Here's some
drugs.
here's some drugs about it. Here's some amphetamines.
Here's some
Cool.
amphetamines
Get
and
back
some
out there.
water. Go, get back to work.
We're going to talk about issues that Elizabeth Taylor had with her production studios later in life, but hers is far from the most tragic of stars from the golden era that we know of. That would probably be Judy
Yeah.
Garland. That is a entirely different story that we don't have time for at this moment. But if you want to cry, learn about how the studios treated little baby Judy
Yeah.
Garland.
Spoiler alert. Not great. Anyway, back to Elizabeth Taylor's contract. Universal just didn't know where to put her at this point. She's in one movie, and then after that, they just let her go. And the casting director said, quote unquote, her eyes are too old. She doesn't have the face of a child.
I mean, they're not wrong.
But not her fault.
Elizabeth just acted older than she was, too. So the next year, they go back to MGM, the other studio that had offered them a contract. And they're like, hey, does that offer still stand? And it just so happened that MGM was looking for a very specific role that they were struggling to fill.
Do you remember Lassie?
I remember when we were kids, it would come on Nick at Night, like when we were little
Black
kids.
and white.
But before it was a TV show, I didn't realize that the TV show was a spinoff of a movie.
Oh.
So for this movie they were making, Lassie, about a really special dog, they were casting it. They needed a young girl who could ride horses without needing any instruction, speak with a British accent, and who was good with dogs.
Somebody used to live in England and knows how to be with
Rode
dogs
horses.
and rides horses.
I am
It's a
here.
no-brainer.
I am perfect.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, this role is hers 2 years later when there was another animal movie coming out.
Yeah, so in the late 30s, there was this book called National Velvet.
So the studios knew this movie was going to be a huge fucking hit, and whoever starred in this role as Velvet was going to get a boost in their career that was going to last. And what were the qualifications to get this role? Funny, you might ask, because you had to be a girl that could pass as 12. Check. Knew how to ride horses. Check. And speak with a British accent. Check. Which is very specifically, strangely typecast for a young Elizabeth Taylor. Just saying.
Now, there is this whole story around how Elizabeth Taylor got this role. And I think it was cooked up by the publicity team for the studio. They say that she went in and auditioned for the role. But the director was like, sorry, babe, you're too small. We need somebody that's at least 3 inches taller. Bye.
So Elizabeth went and took growth hormones. No, I'm kidding. So the story goes that Elizabeth spent the next 3 months eating nothing but eggs whites and working out, which kind of. She went swimming every day, rode horses every day, and then she came back 3 inches taller by the end of the summer. And she looked at him and was like, well, how about now?
So I have several questions for this, because if you could just exercise and eat protein and get taller, I would.
5 feet too.
Yes.
But I feel like back then, the movie Gone with the Wind, it was a huge publicity thing about who was going to get cast as the main character from this beloved book. So I feel like this was just a time in Hollywood. Like, it was just advantageous to the movie's success if they had some lore around how they chose a main
They
character.
had to bring up a big story and have a big... Yeah, there had to be this big, like, over-the-top explanation as to how they got the role.
So this story of, like, Elizabeth's determination to get it, that she went home and
grew
worked
3
out
inches.
Egg white. What? That's not a thing. What probably happened was that they realized that she was the perfect actress to play this role, but they were like, oh, she's 11. We don't want her to hit a growth spurt in the middle of filming it, so let's wait a few months and see if she hits a growth spurt. And then she did, and they said, cool, let's start filming it. That's probably, but that doesn't get asses in seats.
Yeah.
You know what gets asses in seats? This girl was so determined to play Velvet that she
8 eggs.
willed herself to grow.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. Anyway, this movie was a big fucking deal. It was a box office success. It was a critical success. It won awards. It won praise. It specifically won Elizabeth a lot of praise.
And Elizabeth has arrived. She's a fucking star, y'all. However, stardom does come at a price. And though Elizabeth was only 13 when the film debuted, she would later say that with the release of that film, her childhood ended. Oof.
That's
That's real heavy. I'm about to go have to top off my drink.
Yeah, I think I might need another mocktail to take the edge off. And now Elizabeth Taylor is young and beautiful, and she is like full-fledged America's sweetheart. And because the world is a horrible place, people both inside and outside of the studio can't wait for this girl to grow up so they can start hyper sexualizing her. Which, do you remember when we were, because I think we're the same age as the Olsen twins. Do you
Yes.
remember when we were like, when they were doing like a countdown until the Olsen twins were 18? And
Ew.
like society just was like LOL, but now we look back at it and it's like, good God.
Ew.
What?
What?
Ew.
You
But like
don't-
it was already the norm. It was the norm even now with Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
Because like people are talking about her. She's
Ugh.
13. People are talking about her like she's a full-grown woman.
Men are gross sometimes. Some men are gross. Let's
Not all men,
clarify.
but it's
Yes.
always is a fucking man.
Yeah, there's always some weirdo.
There is, unfortunately, a really icky story. Nathan, do you know who Mickey Rooney is?
Oh yeah, like Judy Garland. Like that's immediately what comes in my head whenever you say Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney, he was a child actor himself, but now he's an adult. He was in National Velvet. And there's a really icky story, if true, that they had a quote-unquote affair when she was 14 and he was 26.
That's not an affair. That's rape. Let's not beat
But
around the
like
bush.
the rumors that were going around the studio and everything, it was the phrase used was always that Mickey and Elizabeth were having an affair.
Ugh.
And that makes me so angry because it's not an affair when one of you is 14 and one of you is 26. This is all allegedly. So
okay.
as far as I know, Elizabeth Taylor never spoke towards this quote unquote affair.
But
Just to show you that things have always been gross.
things have always been icky, icky,
Things-
icky, icky.
History is a bag of dicks, bag of dicks, bag of dicks.
Queen's podcast official statement.
We don't like it. Yuck. So she's America's sweetheart.
And now we have to introduce a very terrible character that has shown up in a lot of old Hollywood stuff. I'm just gonna say it. He's like the Harvey Weinstein of.
For sure.
Yeah. Right.
Sure. He was the blueprint.
Yeah.
He was the Harvey blueprint. Absolutely.
Yeah, his name is Louis B. Mayer. He was the head of MGM, a very big production studio, and he's very scary. There were a lot of people in the business that he did a lot of horrible shit to.
But unfortunately, he's super powerful and he's super fucking rich.
Yep.
And so one day, because they're on contract with MGM, and one day Elizabeth and her mom go into his office, and they're like, hey, we heard Elizabeth is being considered for a musical movie, but she doesn't sing, she doesn't dance, and we don't have any we don't have any voice lessons planned. Like, should we get on
How's
top
she
of
gonna
that?
do this? Yeah.
How's she gonna do that? Like, we don't want her to embarrass herself showing up. And this fucking guy loses his shit. And he's like, who do you think you are coming in here talking to me about like how to run my studio? And he told Sarah, I took your fucking daughter out of the gutter. My man.
Excuse me, wait, whoa, gutter?
Gutter?
Gutter? We came from
Gutter?
English high society, and we came here and we were doing just fine before you got here. So it
We were
sounds like
riding horses on 3,000 acres of old British money.
there's no gutters in this situation. There's none.
Où est le gutter? There's none.
Katie pulling out the French. She's pissed.
There's no gutters, my man.
It feels like you might do a This Fucking Guy episode. On
I probably, yep.
Anyway, in response to ye old taking me out of the gutter situation,
Yeah.
Elizabeth says that she swore for the first time in her whole... According to Elizabeth, she shot up and said, "Don't you dare to speak to me that way. You and your studio can go to hell. And I will not be stepping another foot on this lot until you apologize to my mother." And storms out of the office.
Yes, honey. Okay. She is 15 years old. She is a 15-year-old girl, and this is the most powerful man in the entertainment business. And she storms out of his office and runs into the lobby, and once she's out of his earshot, she starts crying, which
Katie.
big Pisces move. I have my feelings. You are going to hear about those feelings. And then immediately afterwards, I am going to have to cry about it for 5 to 10 minutes. She'd never been faced with this kind of negativity before. In that podcast that I've been listening to, Elizabeth I, she was like, I had never used a curse word before in my life. I had never really even heard curse words before in my life. And she goes, and now I fucking love to curse, but I curse for fun. I don't curse for hate. Not
That's
cursing
powerful.
For fun.
That's
this
powerful.
was cursing for hate. She was like, I fucking love cursing, but not if I'm, actually hatred. Like,
for
she
fun,
just likes it.
not
It's like
hate.
adding seasoning to your food, Like,
I love this. So, fuck me.
Yeah.
Fuck.
yeah.
She finally got to mouth off to somebody. And
Yeah.
this is the first time that our girl has stepped into her big clit energy.
Undeniable big clit energy, 100%.
She would later say that she had no idea what gave her the courage to speak that way to him at that time. I mean, grown-ass men were getting yelled at by this lunatic every day, and everyone just laid around and took it because he had money. But, honey, you are not gonna speak to Sarah Taylor that way. Absolutely not.
Do you know who my godfather is? He is a glamour boy. Oh, basically everyone assumed that Elizabeth Taylor was about to be fired and just have her contract ripped up. So she and her mom went home and they just waited for the call to come that she was being fired. She's like, I'm not even stressed. If I get fired, maybe it's for the best. Whatever.
But the call never came. And Elizabeth was never fired. MGM wasn't going to let her go to another studio. Like, are you kidding me? They're gonna milk every single penny from her. And this began Elizabeth Taylor's difficult relationship with her studio, MGM. This also began Elizabeth's realization that she wasn't a person to Louis B. Mayer and his colleagues. She's a dollar sign. She's money and nothing else.
Well, that got dark.
I know.
Do you want to talk about diamonds?
Oh my god, dripping in Jules Eleganza. Yes, please!
So, Elizabeth Taylor, the two things she is most famous for in her life is the men she loved and the many jewels those men gave her.
Now, we're not going to have a lot of time to go every movie that Elizabeth Taylor was in. And we're not going to have time to go every man she dated or every jewel she owned. But on all three accounts, it was a lot.
She had a lot of movies, she had a lot of men, and she had a lot of jewelry.
And Elizabeth was approaching adulthood, and men are, of course, flocking to her.
Of
so
course.
She dated a billionaire pilot. She had a short-term engagement with a football player.
Then she dated a guy whose dad owned this chain of hotels, really small, really niche. I think they're called the Hilton hotels. Have you ever heard of them?
That's
That's
hot.
hot.
His name was Conrad Nikki Hilton. And when the studio saw that they were dating, they were like, oh my god, yes. We have this Hollywood star with a hotel mogul. They're the perfect couple. They're beautiful. They're rich.
So, to paint a picture of their relationship, they hardly know each other by today's standards of dating when Nikki Hilton proposed with $100,000 engagement ring in 1950.
Boop.
That is $100,000 in 1950 money. I didn't do the conversion. Buku. Yeah. And above everything else, Conrad/Nikki and his family had a very squeaky clean reputation. And Elizabeth is about to star in a movie called Father of the Bride, where she plays a bride. If the studio could orchestrate her actually being a bride when the movie of her playing a bride comes out.
It's all an elaborate story. So
to get people to buy movies,
exactly.
buy tickets to movies, yeah.
Exactly. To paint a picture of their relationship, they hardly knew each other when Nikki was proposed to her with a $100,000 engagement ring in 1950. They'd been dating for almost a year, but you have to remember, dating her at this time, and it would have been completely different.
Yeah.
She'd never get to spend the night with him. They'd never go away together for a night or two. It was super G-rated.
How do you know someone if you've never, even if you're not like sleeping together, I feel like you need to travel with somebody. You need to see how they react when they have slow internet before you agree to marry them. I don't know what the 1950 equivalent of seeing somebody act when they have slow internet before you decide to marry them, but they're not getting to know each other at that level. Maybe this will have something to do with what happens next. So the Hiltons are loaded. Like we said, $100,000 engagement ring. And the Taylors aren't poor either.
No.
But MGM insisted on paying for everything for the wedding, which means the studio had complete control over the entire event.
They even put the people that were playing her parents in Father of the Bride right in front of the entire ceremony. Like, come on, MGM. You are literally making a production out of a production out of a production. It's like a snake eating its tail.
Front row is where your parents and your grandparents and your brothers and sisters sit, not your
Not the
coworkers.
cast of a movie. Like,
yeah.
super awkward.
I
super
know.
Awkward.
It was so obviously just a really big advertisement for their movie. But this is their wedding. These are two people getting married. But that's not what this wedding was about. It was not about young love. It was, hey, come see Father of the Bride in theaters near you, you know?
But did she look beautiful that night?
Oh, God, she looked so beautiful, Nathan.
Okay. Right after, the two embarked on 3 months of honeymooning, and immediately everything fell apart. Nikki has a drinking problem and a gambling problem, and Nikki was also physically abusive towards her, which is a bigger reason to divorce someone. All of the above.
Yeah. So moving forward, I'm going to call this man Icky Nikki. Nikki. He was really abusive towards her, and she had no idea where this was coming from, because you got to remember, when they had been dating, they probably weren't left alone all that much.
He was beating the shit out of her and even caused her to miscarry when she was pregnant the first time. They came back from the honeymoon, and Elizabeth Taylor was stressed out. She was smoking like a chimney. She lost a ton of weight. She was like super jittery. She's drinking more than she'd ever had. At this point, she's mentally checked out. She's done. It's over. She's filing for divorce. And in the end, Elizabeth was divorced after only 8 months of marriage. And the divorce was on the grounds of mental cruelty. Not a good look. Apparently, one of the things that would set him off to abuse her is when he'd get called, quote-unquote, Mr. Taylor.
So, you want to hear something funny about that? Like, yeah, it really triggered him to be reminded that his wife was more independently successful than him. If you Google Conrad Nikki Hilton, every single picture of him on Google Images is with Elizabeth Taylor. In his obituary, it was the first husband of Elizabeth Taylor. But now, Icky Nikki is in the past, And Nathan, tell me about this divorce agreement.
Yeah, so it allowed her to take back her maiden name legally.
Nice.
It also allowed her to keep that $100,000 engagement ring. If you
Us.
like it, then you should have put a ring on it.
And
Then I
then you
kept it,
did,
didn't
and
have the
then,
ring on it.
yeah, yeah. And so now things have changed in Elizabeth's life. Like, she has gone from child to woman now. I wish that the transition would have been more peaceful for her, but it was not. She's an independent woman now.
She's also 19 years old.
She's 19. But for back then, that was considered a woman. So she doesn't have to go back and live with her parents. She doesn't financially need to. She has independence, which is something she probably, up until this point, didn't realize how much she wanted.
And on top of this newfound freedom, Elizabeth is also about to start making some serious films. So she stars in a movie called A Place in the Sun, which was important. She would later say that this was the first movie she ever acted in. So this was a challenge to her professionally.
Right. Another reason is because she met a man named Montgomery Clift. And no, this is not husband number 2, but he did become a very, very close friend of Elizabeth's, which would set a trend for like the rest of her life, is that anytime she was a co-star with a gay man, especially like when he's closeted, they would form like intense friendships that would last the rest of their lives.
And that's why she's a gay icon, right? Like, that's one of the reasons.
They did 4 or 5 movies together over the course of the next 15 years, and not a lot of people knew that he was gay. He would come over and like to her hotel room, and she would like take a bath, and that's like when they would run lines and stuff. And so everyone just assumed they were having an affair because he was always coming and going from her hotel room, maybe in a robe or whatever. And I was like, no, that's just...
And that's how Nathan survived the 40s if I was born in that time.
But also, Montgomery
I'm just running
Clift,
lines.
Yes.
Just Place in the Sun. This movie won the Academy Award for Best Director, Best Costumes, Best Screenplay, and it was the first time that a lot of series directors realized that Elizabeth isn't just a pretty face, she's talented.
Like, holy shit, this girl can actually act. That's something she's been doing her whole life. So
maybe she's good at it.
Maybe she's good. So that's where we are going to leave Elizabeth Taylor. After 10 years in the business, she's finally being taken seriously. She's tasting freedom. She's shed 1 asshole husband and gained 2 engagement diamond rings, and she's only 19.
So cheers to that.
Cheers to that. I can't wait to see what happens next. Don't Google it.